When violence shatters a life, it doesn't just leave behind a crime scene. It leaves behind families searching for answers, advocates fighting to be heard, and storytellers determined to make sure the victim is not forgotten. This book, This Is True Crime, is for all of them. Whether you are a grieving mother staring down a 20-year-old cold case, a survivor trying to reclaim your voice, or a podcaster, writer, or researcher called to tell these stories with care, this is your roadmap. Raven Rollins has stood in all of those places. She is a survivor, a victim family member, and an advocate who has spent years pushing against silence and navigating the systems that so often feel unmovable. This is True Crime is a guide in navigating the true crime space for anyone who refuses to give up on a case when the system goes quiet. In these pages, she shares not only the tools to dig, like how to request records and uncover what lies buried in files, but also the wisdom of how to do this work ethically, honoring victims and their families along the way. Learn how to take those first steps forward, whether you are carrying your own loved one's case or shining a light on someone else's, by reading This Is True Crime today. Get it wherever books are sold online or your favorite library app. Remember, you are not powerless. You are not alone, and your voice matters.
This episode contains discussion of the abduction and murder of a child, along with references to sexual assault evidence, trial testimony, and graphic forensic findings. Please take care while listening. I hadn't been following this case closely at first. I knew the basics like most people did, but it wasn't one that I had fully immersed myself in. And then you all started asking again and again for me to cover Athena's story. So I did something that I don't normally do. I turned on the live trial. I started when they did, and I watched it all unfold in real time. I've watched interviews, interrogations, court proceedings. I've seen crime scene photos and gone over autopsies. But there is something very different about watching it as it's happening. There's no distance, no buffer. You are sitting in it as it unfolds. I am building this episode as the sentencing phase is still ongoing. Not only is this not my normal process, but I usually refuse to do it this way. I usually wait until everything is finished, trial, conviction, sentencing, before I ever start writing a script. But after watching the first week of testimony, I knew that I couldn't stay in this any longer than I absolutely had to. This case has affected me in a way that I didn't expect, and I am not okay. I've covered child deaths many times before, but this one hit differently, and I'm not sure why. I think part of that is because I have a little blonde-haired, blue-eyed baby at home, around the same age as Athena was. And part of it is probably the work that I do. This constant awareness of how quickly things can go wrong, how people aren't always who they appear to be. But this intensified that in a way I wasn't prepared for. I have struggled to get through this trial. It feels like a kind of secondary trauma has settled in, mentally and physically. I am exhausted. And I'll say something that may sound sort of strange, but it's the most honest way that I can describe it. I feel like I can't even look at a FedEx truck the same way anymore. There's this concept, older behavioral conditioning methods, where someone is exposed to something over and over in a negative context until it creates a physical aversion, where just the sight of it makes you sick. Back then, it was something like food or cigarettes. Just the sight of those things would make the person want to vomit. And that's the closest thing that I can compare to this. After being so immersed in the details of what happened inside that delivery truck, seeing all the videos and audio and photos, it's like my brain won't let me separate it from the ordinary world anymore. I've felt haunted by that FedEx truck for almost 2 weeks now. It seems everywhere I go, there's one in front of me, or next to me, or blocking my driveway, and I feel sick every time. I'm starting this now because I don't want to live in this case any longer than I have to. But I also believe in doing this work and with the victim at the center of it. There are cases that don't just break hearts. They shatter any illusion of ordinary safety. And the murder of 7-year-old Athena Strand is one of those cases. Athena was a little girl in Wise County, Texas. She should have been worrying about school and Christmas and whatever a 7-year-old dreams about when the world still feels wide and magical. Instead, in late November 2022, she vanished from outside her home. 2 days later, she was found dead. A man who confessed to taking her was a stranger lurking in a FedEx truck. He had come to the house to drop off a package that was supposed to be Athena's Christmas gift. And now, years later, after delays and a venue change, the case is finally in its punishment phase. Tanner Horner has pleaded guilty to capital murder and aggravated kidnapping. A jury is deciding whether he will spend the rest of his life in prison without parole or be sentenced to death. This is the story of Athena Strand, the child at the center of this case, the timeline of her disappearance, the confession that prosecutors say was packed with lies, the evidence jurors and I have now heard in court, and the lasting damage done to a family that will never be whole again. I'm your host, Raven Rollins, and this is Sirens.
You're listening to Sirens, a true crime podcast, brought to you by the Sirens Network. This podcast contains explicit content, so listener discretion is advised. The opinions expressed on this podcast are solely the views of the hosts and do not reflect the views of affiliates, associates, or sponsors of this podcast. This is Sirens, a true crime podcast.
Before Athena Strand became a headline, she was a child with a full life and a personality all her own. Testimony in court painted the picture of a strong-willed, bright little girl. Prosecutors described her as precious, and the people who loved her did what families always do in the aftermath of an unimaginable crime. They tried to pull the child back out of the headlines and return her humanity to the center of the story.
She was born Saturday, May 23rd of 2015 at 9:01 p.m. She was the perfect mixture of me and Jacob. She loved to wear her pretty princess dresses, but at the same time, she would play in the dirt in those same pretty princess dresses. And she was free, and she was wild, and she was bright, and she was loving. She wanted to be loved and to give love, and that's it.
Athena was 7 years old when she disappeared on November 30th, 2022, from her father's home in Paradise, Texas, a rural community in Wise County, northwest of Fort Worth. At the time, Athena had been staying with her father, Jacob Strand, and her stepmother, Ashley. Reporting over the years has indicated that the family arrangement had been influenced by her mother, Maitlyn Gandy's health issues, and that Athena had moved to Texas from Oklahoma for a period of time. In court, Athena's mother would later testify about the ordinary plans she had made with her daughter.
Athena loved everything. She loved life. We liked to watch movies together. It was very common for us to have movie nights, popcorn and candy. It was very common for her to ride her horse with her Aunt Kate. It was very common for her to want to do anything outdoors with her father, so long as her father was around. As long as Daddy was around, she was great with being dirty and being outside. There's no doubt whatsoever that every single person that has ever met Athena absolutely loved Athena.
The heartbreak is not only in what happened, but everything that was supposed to happen.
There were rough moments, but we always had an agreement that those rough moments didn't need to enter into our children's lives. We co-parented, in my opinion, pretty dang well. Because as long as Athena's needs were met and she was happy, that was important to him and I. We exchanged Sunday, November 27th of 2022.
You remember the last thing you said to Athena?
I told her that I loved her and that I would see her on Friday. We had a quick drop off because her daddy was going to take them to the Christmas lights that night. So it's not the goodbye that I would have wanted.
On November 30th, when Athena came home from school, by all accounts, it hadn't been the best day. She'd struggled a bit, enough that her teacher took a moment to encourage her, telling her that the next day would be better. Then she came home on what would be the last day of her life. So at the time, Jacob Strand's home was undergoing renovations, and Athena and her stepsister had been sleeping in a converted outbuilding, a shed on the property. Ashley Strand, at the time of Athena's disappearance, was inside the main house preparing dinner. She later testified that she was not immediately aware Athena had gone outside, and when she realized Athena was missing, she began searching the property and contacting family nearby. After that search turned up nothing, law enforcement was called. Athena's father was at work at the time, meaning the moment she vanished unfolded without him there. Like so many missing child cases, the early window was chaos. Searchers flooded the area, an Amber Alert was issued, and the community mobilized. Athena's mother, Maitlyn, wasn't in Texas when her daughter disappeared. She was in Oklahoma. And when she got the call, she got in her car and she started driving. She testified about that drive in court, and she said that the trip normally took her about 2 hours, but that night, the drive home, it only took her 45 minutes.
I was in my house. My phone had died, and Jacob called my little sister, who was too far out from me. So she called my older sister, and my older sister came banging on the door like you would have thought the house was on fire. And I opened the door and she said, "Athena's missing." And immediately I said, "No, she's not." So I went and got my phone, and Jacob's name popped up on my phone. On my way down to Jacob's house, I stayed on the phone with him pretty well most of the way until I got to about Ryan, Oklahoma.
She described what that drive felt like in her body.
It felt like I was dying. I couldn't breathe, but I knew I had to keep going. I almost tapped the brakes because I thought I was having a heart attack. But I just told myself that if I kept going, it would be okay and I would find her.
But she didn't stop, because in her mind, she was going to find Athena. She was going to get there, and her daughter would be there. But when she arrived, search efforts were already underway. Law enforcement was already on the scene, and instead of being able to run out and search for her daughter, she was held back.
When I got there, an officer asked me who I was. I told him I was Athena's mom. He directed me back inside my Jeep and told me that they were bringing dogs out and that my scent could throw the dogs off, so I had to stay inside my Jeep.
She wasn't allowed to join the search for the first 2 days. So while everyone else was out there calling Athena's name, her mother was there, alone, waiting.
At 4 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, December 1st, an officer had told me that they had taken away the dogs and I could get out of the vehicle, and I asked him, "Can I search myself?" He said yes. Ashley's dad, Jacob's dad, my uncle, and Jacob and I went out and searched all of Jacob's property and the surrounding properties, even though all of those people were probably sound asleep in their own beds, and we didn't ask permission. Later that day, when more volunteers had come out and more officers arrived, I had talked to a few different investigators throughout the time. I walked lineups. I walked that county road over and over and over again, but she wasn't there.
Search efforts intensified over those next 2 days, and on December 2nd, they publicly announced that her body had been found and that the FedEx contract driver had confessed. Athena was found nude and face down in the water.
I wanted to tell Sheriff Aiken that he didn't know what he was talking about. I asked him if I could confirm that that was my daughter, and he told me no, because she looks too bad. And I went into a place of denial. I stopped breathing and I started to black out as I heard Ashley screaming. I knew it was him.
Tanner Horner was working as a contract delivery driver, assigned to FedEx routes through a contractor called Big Topspin. On the day Athena disappeared, he delivered a package to her home. That package, Athena's mother later said publicly, contained a set of You Can Be Anything Barbie dolls meant for Athena's Christmas gift. That detail, to me, is almost too cruel to process. A child's Christmas present arrives at the house, and the person delivering it becomes the reason she never gets to open it. Investigators eventually focused on those delivery records connected to the home, and that's how the investigation rapidly narrowed toward Tanner Horner. According to the arrest affidavit and later testimony, Horner told investigators that after delivering the package, he backed up his vehicle and accidentally struck Athena. But even in his own version, the story does not end with panic and a 911 call. He told investigators Athena was alive and not seriously hurt. He said she was talking and even told him her name. Then he claimed he panicked. He put her into the van because he was afraid she would tell her father that he had hit her with it. From there, Horner admitted he tried to break her neck, and when that didn't work, he said he manually strangled her. Authorities said he eventually led them to her body in the Boyd area, near the Trinity River at Bobo Crossing. But by the time this case got to trial in 2026, prosecutors made it clear that they did not believe the accidental hit story was true. In opening statements, Wise County District Attorney James Staton told jurors the only truthful thing Horner had said was that he killed Athena. Everything else, the prosecution argued, was part of a sprawling web of lies. Horner was arrested and charged with aggravated kidnapping and capital murder in Athena's death. Because the victim was a child under 10, the case qualified as capital murder under Texas law, and prosecutors sought the death penalty. The case later moved from Wise County to Tarrant County because of pretrial publicity and the enormous impact Athena's murder had on her local community. The road to trial stretched on through delays, hearings, and legal maneuvering. And finally, on April 7th, 2026, just as trial was beginning, Horner abruptly pleaded guilty to both aggravated kidnapping and capital murder. But that plea did not end the case. It simply shifted the trial into the punishment phase, where jurors would decide between life without parole and the death penalty. Once Horner pleaded guilty, the question in court stopped being whether he did it and became, what punishment does this crime deserve? Texas juries in capital cases weigh whether a defendant is a continuing threat or whether mitigating evidence is sufficient to spare his life. And in this case, prosecutors argued for death. Jurors were shown evidence from inside Horner's delivery truck. That included video and audio that captured Athena alive in the vehicle after she was taken from her home. In one image shown in court, Athena appeared alert and unharmed, kneeling behind and to the right of the driver's seat in the doorway area of the cab at 11:42 p.m. The single image appears to cut directly against Horner's claim that he had already struck her and was reacting to an accident. Prosecutors also told jurors that audio from inside the van documented Athena's fear and resistance. From the trial, Athena asking questions no child should ever have to ask. Whether he was a kidnapper, where he was taking her, and crying out for her mother. In the video and audio, Horner threatened her, at one point telling her not to scream or he would hurt her. And later, just before killing her, he covered the camera with a sticky note, but the audio continued. I personally don't think that he was aware that the cameras recorded video and audio continuously, as some systems only record when triggered by certain things, like a hard stop or a door opening. And I don't think that he was aware that it recorded audio at all. He told her at one point to take off her shirt, and as he killed her, he sang Jingle Bell Rock along with the radio. The judge warned everyone in advance that they still had time to step out before hearing it, but by multiple accounts from inside the courtroom, the recording was devastating. I saw that devastation in real time. Jurors cried. Family members left the room. Prosecutors said the recording captured the level of Athena's fight, and that she fought hard for her life. She wanted to live. The medical examiner testified that Athena died from blunt force injuries, smothering, and manual strangulation. The manner of death was homicide.
Basically, how I received her is that she is naked, there's no clothing, and both of her hands are covered with brown paper bags, as I referred to previously, that are actually secured around her wrists with tape. And then her body was covered with kind of a brownish dirt silt appearance, and there was also fragments of vegetation within the body bag and within her scalp hair. My initial impression, the first thing I thought, is that she is completely congested from the neck up, meaning that it's much darker due to blood kind of being in that area of the body. I'm trying to think of a better way to describe congested, but it was just, you could tell that there was something going on in the head and neck area. That's before we even cleaned the body. The best way to describe it is blood's backed up in the vasculature. So all the blood vessels that circulate blood throughout your body are the vasculature system. So it's arteries, veins, and connecting those two are capillaries. Let me say, congestion on its own as an isolated finding can be nonspecific. And you can see it in sudden cardiac deaths. You can see it in drownings. You can see it in asphyxial type deaths. So it's nondescript on its own, but a constellation of findings can be more helpful when you're making a diagnosis. And then her eyes are green in color. When you look at the whites of her eyes and the lining of her eyes, you see florid petechial hemorrhages, which are florid just means they're everywhere. Petechial hemorrhages specifically refer to these tiny pinpoint hemorrhages that you see throughout the eyes. The neck has trauma, the chest is trauma. I did not appreciate any trauma on her vagina or within her vagina. The vaginal hymen is present and it's intact. And then her extremities, so the arms and the legs, also show trauma, and then the back has trauma. So again, you can still appreciate the congestion in her head and face, and you can see multiple types of blunt force injuries, essentially from the middle of her upper chest to the top of her head. Because it wasn't just petechial hemorrhages in the eyes, it was her entire face, basically her entire head, with all of that congestion. So it implies that blood is pooling in that region of the head. So my big concern was that there was an asphyxial component to this death. Asphyxia is a fancy word. It's a mechanism for how somebody can die, and there's different types of asphyxial deaths, because you don't just spontaneously asphyxiate. There needs to be an explanation for why it occurred. But basically it means that the body is starved of oxygen. Either the blood supply is cut off or not able to supply blood, especially to the brain or the airway, or the person is not able to actually breathe and get that oxygen into the body. So examples of asphyxial death: smothering, strangulation, mechanical asphyxia, chemical asphyxia. Carbon monoxide is an example, but that's an overview of asphyxia. Blunt force trauma would indicate that the body comes in contact with a blunt object. Those both could fall under the umbrella of blunt force injuries. Types of blunt force trauma would be something as superficial as what we call an abrasion or a scrape. It's a friction injury on the surface of the skin. Or it could go deeper to where you have an impact and you actually break the vasculature under the skin, and now you have a contusion, also known as a bruise. Or it could go so far as the blunt object overcomes the elasticity of the skin to where now you've got it creates a gash, or what we call a laceration. So abrasions, contusions, and lacerations are all examples of blunt force injuries. What I saw on the decedent was a mixture of abrasions and contusions. I did not see any lacerations on the skin. So I'm just going to kind of read what I have written here. but for the head and neck area. So starting with on the forehead, there's a 1.5 inch focus of patterned abrasions that are on the right side of her forehead. So they're abrasions because they're a superficial injury of the skin, but they have this zigzag, almost like a tread-like pattern on the right side of her forehead. And then she also has a 3/4 inch contusion on the middle of her forehead. She has a 3/4 inch contusion above the lateral aspect of her left eyebrow. She has more of those patterned abrasions, the zigzag pattern abrasions and abraded contusions that actually go across both of her eye areas, across the entire nose, from the root to the bulb. This is the bulb of the nose for me. And also across her midface, including the cheeks, the philtrum, which is the space between the nose and the upper lip, and she even has it a little bit on her upper lip as well. She has a small contusion. It's 1/8 of an inch on the right side of her upper lip. When you actually pull up the upper lip and you see this flap of skin that connects the lip to the gums, that's called the frenulum. Just left of that, she's got another contusion of her gums in that area, and that's 1/2 inch. And then she also has, I'm just going to be real, instead of being descriptive, she has what look like bite marks. It's really a curvilinear series of lacerations that correspond with her upper teeth. She has bite marks on the surface of her tongue. She also has more of those zigzag tread-like patterned abraded contusions across the anterior aspect of her neck and the middle of her upper chest. In my opinion, it would be stomping is with the foot but has force to it, whereas pressing, I mean, that doesn't necessarily have to be the foot, but pressing means it's just held against the surface of the body, not with any sort of force. I mean, I would think that, especially if it was on the face, you have a lot of delicate bones that are in the face, so I would expect there to be some fracturing with a stomping injury. The other area where the skin was kind of discolored and also had this square focus of pattern abrasions is on the left side of her jaw. So those are on the surface of the tongue. So if you stick your tongue out, just right on the top, and it's a curvilinear pattern of these kind of spaced out lacerations that are consistent with teeth marks.
Wait, you said teeth marks. It would look like it was somebody else's teeth marks?
No.
Right, so it would have been her own,
Yes.
clamping down on her own tongue.
Yes. She had a 3/8 inch pale blue contusion of the anterior aspect of her right hip. She had multiple red contusions measuring up to 3/4 inch on the middle of her upper back. And then she had these areas of kind of that tan brown confluent abrasions across the back. They were slightly more so on the right than the left side of the back. And she also had them on the posterior aspect of her right upper arm and her right elbow. And then a cluster of petechial type hemorrhages on the left side of her back, and then more abrasions on the middle and lower back. Okay, so smothering is with the upper airway, the nose and the mouth being covered. Choking is the airway is occluded by like an object, or just something within the back part of the oral cavity. Strangulation, however, means that there's pressure on the neck, and you have the airway and the vasculature in the neck. Evidence of smothering is essentially you have these injuries that go across the nose and the mouth. So that would be supportive of that, in addition to all the features of asphyxia. But for strangulation, there's a specialized dissection that we can perform where we actually look at the musculature of the anterior aspect of the neck, and we look at it layer by layer. And you're looking for evidence of hemorrhage in the musculature. And then in addition to that, you're looking at the cartilaginous structures of the airway. So if you feel here, the windpipe, that's what we're looking at. And sometimes you can see fractures of that in strangulation. But essentially, I did that specialized dissection in this case. So the scalp, I already mentioned previously that there were no fractures of the skull. But one of the things that we do during the autopsy is we reflect the scalp so that we can look underneath the scalp. And she had multiple points of bleeding underneath the scalp.
And what is it that causes that type of bleeding?
Impact. So the complete statement I made for cause of death, she died as the result of blunt force injuries with smothering and strangulation.
That testimony is deeply important because it broadens the medical picture beyond the confession story Horner initially told, or even the video and audio played. This was not simply a case in which a child was accidentally hit and then strangled in a split-second panic. The autopsy evidence presented to jurors described multiple forms of lethal trauma. And one of the most disturbing developments in the punishment phase was the forensic testimony regarding sexual assault evidence. When the ME was asked if she found injuries that would be consistent with sexual assault, she said that she did not, but also made it clear that that did not mean that it didn't happen. A forensic analyst also testified, and they said that male DNA was found on swabs collected in Athena's sexual assault kit. Jurors also heard that presumptive blood and semen were detected on Horner's FedEx shirt, his hoodie, his jeans, and his underwear. Athena's fingernail clippings also tested presumptively positive for blood. Prosecutors argued that Horner's DNA was found under Athena's fingernails and in places where, as they put it, it should never have been on a 7-year-old child. According to what was presented in the video footage, after he leaves her body, he returns to the truck, and at 1:13 a.m., he removes the sticky note covering the camera. He lights a cigarette casually, and he begins driving. 5 minutes later, at 1:18 a.m., he pulls into a Love's gas station. He sits there briefly, texting on his phone, and then he puts the phone in his pocket, gets out of the truck, and disappears out of frame. At 1:24 a.m., he comes back carrying cleaning supplies, and he begins scrubbing the back of the truck calmly. By 1:29 a.m., he's done, and he steps out again to put the supplies away. At 1:32 a.m., he gets back into the truck, and he's already on the phone with a woman, presumably his mother. He tells her that he got sick and he threw up in the truck. Directly after that phone call ends, at 1:33 a.m., he calls his boss, and he tells him the same thing, that he had to stop at Love's to clean out the back of the truck because he got sick after eating something bad. He even asks if he can have the same truck on his next shift so he can finish cleaning it because he couldn't get rid of the smell. They talk briefly and the call ends at 1:36 a.m. By 1:53 a.m., he's pulling into the FedEx truck bay to end his shift. You can see him gathering his things and putting items into a backpack on the passenger seat, including Athena's clothing. And then he leaves with them. At first, Horner told investigators he had thrown her clothing out of the truck window while driving. On December 2nd, 2022, after Horner was taken into custody, the FBI searched the property where he was living. Behind a shed, in the grass, mixed in with a pile of trash, he found her clothes. Athena's blue jeans embroidered with pink flowers, her socks, and her underwear. These photos of these items were shown to the jury. Horner was actually living in that shed with other family members and his young son. It was in horrible conditions. It was very small, and no one, in my opinion, let alone multiple people, should have been living there. And here's a little something that shocked me during the trial. The day after Athena was taken, while her family, neighbors, and law enforcement were actively searching for her, Tanner Horner drove his delivery route back through that same area, right back past the place where she had vanished. There is footage of it. And what makes it so unsettling isn't just that he returned, it's how normal it looks. Just another delivery truck moving through the neighborhood, just another day on his route. He pulls up in that FedEx truck, hat turned backwards, radio playing, something conversational like a podcast, to T.R. Murphy Ranch, and he makes a casual delivery. Then he's off down the road, but the road is clustered with searchers. People were out there searching for Athena, calling her name, hoping, praying that she would be found alive. With vehicles lined on both sides of the road and people everywhere, a visible, active search. He stops, and he honks at someone off camera. He leans out the window and he asks, "What's going on?" You can't hear the response, but you can hear him say, "Oh shit." And then he keeps driving. About half a mile or so down, he slows again. This time he's motioning people to cross in front of him, ushering them along so he can keep moving. In the mirrors, you can see it clearly, clusters of people behind him, spread out across the road, searching. He lights a cigarette and keeps going. He then comes to another stop, where people are in the road and an ATV passes in front of his truck. There are searchers everywhere, and he starts getting irritated, visibly. He honks multiple times. He slowly inches forward and he lays on the horn again. You can hear him mutter something under his breath about people being in the way. At one point, he leans out the window and calls to someone, asking if they can tell the others to move so he can get through. Someone walks up to his driver's side window and they talk briefly. While they're talking, you can see horseback searchers pass by. This person who's talking to him tells him that the road is blocked ahead and that they're searching for a 7-year-old girl. And that's when he says, "Are you serious?" Still smoking, still sitting there like this is just any other delay in his route. He's told, yes, it's blocked ahead, but pull forward and see if you can get through, and so he does. Slowly, he carefully navigates through the largest concentration of people searching for this 7-year-old child that he knows is already gone, and he knows exactly where she is. At one point, he says to himself, "Wow, people keep getting in my way, man." And then he makes it through, and he keeps going, back to his deliveries, as if nothing is happening. So the prosecution also introduced testimony from women who said Horner had sexually assaulted them years earlier, when they were teenagers. According to trial reporting, one witness testified she was sexually assaulted by Horner in 2013 when she was 16, and he was 22. Another testified he raped her in 2014 when she too was 16. Prosecutors were trying to show future dangerousness and a broader pattern of predatory behavior. And then there's the zero persona. Oh yes. Jurors also watched interrogation footage in which Horner referred to an alternate persona he called Zero. According to court coverage, he blamed Zero for what happened and suggested this alter ego had taken over. He also gave investigators contradictory versions of events, and authorities said it took hours before he finally led them to Athena's body. At one point, according to reporting from the trial, Horner said Zero had taken initiative because Athena was going to put us away for a long time. Prosecutors clearly presented it as part of Horner's pattern of lies and evasions. Jurors also heard about handwritten letters Horner wrote in jail before a suicide attempt. According to reporting, those letters included messages to Athena's family and detectives. Horner wrote that he had done a terrible thing and expressed remorse. They also heard that Horner had initially lied to his mother about what happened. His mother testified that he told her he had backed into a little girl and then strangled her in a panic. During a phone call, she can be heard asking him, though, "Did you do anything weird to that little girl? I know how you can get." After seeing the evidence in court, his mother testified that she no longer believed the version he had earlier told her. There was also testimony from Athena's family, and jurors got to get a direct look at the human cost of this crime. Athena's mother, Maitlyn, testified in pink, Athena's favorite color, and she told jurors,
Because I had to cover up handprint bruises around my daughter's neck, and because she no longer has a voice, and I want people to know that she's not just some story, she's not just some number, she's not just some picture you see in a headline. She was loved, she is loved, and she is missed, and she was real, and she had a life, and she wanted to live, and I will be her face, and I will be her voice, and I will make sure that every person in this world knows that she was loved and that she wanted to live, and we want her in our lives.
And Athena's father, Jacob, described the devastation that followed her death. He testified that he felt he had failed in his role as a father because he was not there to protect her. He said he had turned to alcohol and that the grief ruined his marriage, and that he at one point lost about 50 pounds because he simply could not eat. The family's pain did not stop with Athena's parents. Testimony indicated that Athena's sister had needed therapy and has had nightmares, and that she runs and hides when she sees delivery drivers. The defense strategy has been to ask jurors for mercy without denying guilt. They have pointed to Horner's neurodevelopment and mental health background, including autism, childhood lead exposure, prenatal alcohol exposure, bullying, and family dysfunction. Horner's mother testified about her own addiction, abuse history, and the instability that shaped Horner's childhood. At one point, she had told the jury that he had been diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, the diagnostic language used at that time. The defense position, as reported, is not that Athena's death was excusable, but that Horner's life should be spared because of the profound impairments and trauma they say shaped him. This case has horrified people for obvious reasons. Athena was a child. The crime happened in what should have been an ordinary domestic moment, an innocent moment, a child playing outside in her own yard. The accused was a delivery driver, someone entering the property in a role most people are taught to treat as routine and safe. This case has also had legislative impact. After Athena's murder, Texas lawmakers created what became known as the Athena Alert, a change meant to help authorities send out Amber-style alerts, even when not every traditional Amber Alert criterion had yet been met. In other words, the law was designed to close a gap exposed by the frantic early hours of Athena's disappearance, maybe in someone else's case. So in a very literal sense, Athena's case changed how Texas handles missing child alerts from then on. So Tanner Horner's guilt is no longer in dispute. He admitted it in open court. He kidnapped her and he killed her. Nothing can restore what was taken from Athena or her family. Nothing can return the child who should have opened her Christmas present, grown older, and had the future every 7-year-old deserves.
I tell her that I'm sorry and how y'all are working really hard to make sure that she's not forgotten.
The jury has sentenced Tanner Horner to death for the kidnapping and murder of Athena Strand. And this death sentence will almost certainly be followed by years of appeals. So while the verdict is final in one sense, the legal process will still continue. But for Athena's family, the center of this case remains unchanged. A 7-year-old little girl who was taken, and no sentence can ever undo that loss. I'm your host, Raven Rollins, and this is Sirens. I stand Athena strong.
Now the river keeps her secret, and the wind still moans her name. Every whisper through the holler sounds like Willie's shame. No preaching, no confession can wash that evil down. For the ghost of sweet young Mary haunts the streets of Knoxville town. They found her by the river's bend. The jury took one look. They chained up Willie's trembling hands, but he still got off the hook. bag at midnight and slip past county lines, but guilt will follow faster than the law of humankind. One night beneath a blood-red moon, he heard her calling low. A shadow crossed the riverbank, her eyes were pale as snow. She took his hand and pulled him where cold water bends around, and by dawn they found his hat floating back to Knoxville town. Now the river keeps her secret, and the wind still moans her name. Every whisper through the holler sounds like Willie's shame. No preaching, no confession can wash that evil down, for the ghost of sweet young Mary haunts the streets of Knoxville town. Now the river keeps her secret, but her song is spreading round. They say the ghost of Mary still walks round Knoxville town. No preaching, no confession can wash that evil down, for love betrayed and blood repaid still haunts old Knoxville town. For love betrayed and blood repaid, she haunts old Knoxville town.
You've reached the end of our episode. All suspects are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Catch more next time on the Sirens Podcast.